Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another video. As Powerhouse Indicator are doing a 5-year anniversary sale at the moment for the next week, I thought this would be just an excuse to talk about one of my favourite labels, arguably my favourite label. And yes, critics would say it's all English language films, and they're not even, sometimes the titles aren't really cult, they're completely forgotten titles, but there's some absolute gems in the Indicator catalogue. And this sale, they don't do sales very often, but seeing they've been going for 5 years now, which is quite impressive in the catalogue they've put out, and they continue to grow. They've now recently announced that they'll be releasing more in North America, because some of the titles are region B locked, but I think that's going to be a thing of the past. So they are kind of growing from strength to strength, and I always like supporting them because they are a small run company. They're not a massive conglomerate releasing these films or anything. So I just thought, as if I need an excuse to talk about Indicator releases, I'm just going to go through some that you might think about checking out. Again, everybody's opinion's different, so I'm not saying you must buy this film, because you might not like it. I'm going to try and avoid the obvious selections. I know other people have done videos in a similar fashion, but this is more a look at some of the little gems that might slip through the cracks, even in Indicator, which is basically a label which is built on little gems that have fallen through the cracks. So currently they are doing, some of the titles are 50% off, some of them are down to $6.99, the standard editions, $9.99 on the limited editions. There's some box sets, but one of the big kind of 5-year anniversary birthday specials is the fact that their first box set, the Sinbad trilogy, has been repressed another 3,000 copies. This was originally 6,000. I had to buy this on secondary sellers. Fortunately, I bought it a couple of years ago when it wasn't ridiculous money, but obviously it's now out of print and ridiculous money. So this gives a really nice chance for people who didn't get this one originally. It is a beautiful box set. It has the seventh voyage of Sinbad, the golden voyage of Sinbad, and Sinbad in the Eye of the Tiger. These are spine numbers 24, 25 and 26. As far as I'm aware, the only difference with the repressing box is they are just Blu-ray only. These ones were Blu-ray and DVD. But I mean, it's a beautiful box set, wonderful artwork. The original one was multi-region. And obviously this has tremendous nostalgic value, and these are fun films, but if you're a certain age, they probably hold a special place in your heart for that Ray Harryhausen stop motion animation, which is still wondrous. You know, obviously some audiences might have moved on to CGI and stuff, but you'll never beat stop motion because there were physical, you know, they exist in a physical universe, and there's just something magical about it. So a chance for people to get, you know, there are standard editions of the 3 films being released since, but this is a chance to get the lovely Sinbad box set. And again, as far as I'm aware, the only difference is they're just Blu-ray only, there's no DVDs. So the rest of the titles are just going to be single editions. I'm not going to bother with the box sets. I think some of the Columbia Noir sets are now out of stock, and there's a few of these titles that are now out of stock as far as the limited edition. But we'll start with spy number 29. This is Bill Forsyth's Housekeeping. Bill Forsyth, one of the great Scottish directors. This is one of his American films from 1987, and it's a little bit odd. It's not as funny as his other films. It's more kind of bittersweet and kind of tragic. Christine Latty stars as a woman who takes on a relative, and she lives in the outskirts of town, and she's kind of seen as being a little bit of an outcast, and a little bit odd, just because she has a slightly different way of looking at the world. Again, with all Bill Forsyth films, it's just a beautifully crafted character piece with characters you want to spend more time with. But again, you can see, like a lot of the Indicator releases, it was never going to be a box office smash, because it's just too strange and odd. But it has, like all of these films, it has a tremendous heart, and it's well worth checking out. Next is spy number 36. This is Otley with Tom Courtenay and Romy Schneider. And again, this is a wonderful offbeat James Villiers, Leonard Rossiter, James Bolam, directed by Dick Clement, who's famous for writing sitcoms. And it's one of those spy films where Tom Courtenay is a spy by accident. But again, it's just a lot of fun. Like a lot of the Indicator releases, a film that I'd never heard of, which doesn't say much, but it's just an absolute joy and will put a smile on your face. This one's from 1969, and as usual with Indicator, the extras are tremendous. Again, a lot of the Indicator titles are like, well, would I be interested in that? But then, even if you're not blown away by the film, the amount of effort they put into extras, talking about the music, commentaries, talking about specific technicians in their careers, talking about specific actors in their whole careers. They have like audio interviews from people in the past. Spy number 69 is Jack Nicholson and Harvey Keitel in The Border. I think, as most people probably know, I'm not as high on Jack Nicholson as I used to be, but even I obviously acknowledge that he did some fantastic work in the 70s and 80s, and I think this is one of his more forgotten performances. It's about corruption on the Tex-Mex border. It also stars Warren Oates and Valerie Perrine, along with Harvey Keitel. It's directed by Tony Richardson, and it's just really, really good and gritty. It doesn't answer all the questions, because obviously it's a complicated subject, but well worth your time. Next, number 71, speaking of Jack Nicholson. Again, a lot of these I'll have done random reviews on, as I tend to do with Indicator releases. So again, I'll probably let you know which ones I've done random reviews on, but The Fortune is certainly one, directed by Mike Nichols, also starring Warren Beatty. This is an odd film set in the 20s. It doesn't quite work as a kind of screwball caper film, but it's kind of compelling and fascinating at the same time. And obviously, if you're fans of both of these actors, you'll probably get a lot of joy out of them. Again, it's just one of those films that bears rewatching, because there's lots of lovely details. It kind of looks like Chinatown. This was made in 1975. So it's after Chinatown, but next is spy number 73. This is Little Murders, starring Elliot Gould. directed by Alan Arkin, one of the few films directed by Alan Arkin. And this is darkly comic. Probably couldn't get away with making it nowadays due to some of the content that's in it. But it's challenging. It's a little avant-garde. This is one of the earlier indicators I got, and it's odd and it's strange, but it's certainly compelling and interesting. It's absurdist. It's kind of an American buffet foire. Next is Spy Number 87, which I do believe the limited edition has went out of print. You should be able to pick up a standard edition. I think it's a standard edition. This is Coppola's Gardens of Stone. Again, I'm a weirdo, as we all know, and this might be my favourite Coppola film, with James Caan, James Earl Jones, Dean Stockwell, Mary Stuart Masterton, D.B. Sweeney, Angelica Houston. Set in Arlington during the Vietnam War. It's a lot quieter than, obviously, a lot of Coppola's more famous films, but it's just so good. Number 103 is Dragon Wick. Gene Tierney, Walter Huston, and Vincent Price. Produced by Ernst Lubitsch, written and directed by Joseph Mankiewicz. This is just a wonderful gothic piece about secrets and mental illness, and top drawer Vincent Price. This is 1946, so it's well before the Poe era of Price, which is remarkably hard to say. Just a beautiful film, and again the print looks absolutely gorgeous, as most of these indicator prints do. Next is Spy Number 104. It's The Snakepit with Olivia de Havilland, which is a really surprising. It's from 1948. It's about a mental institution that Olivia de Havilland gets put in, and it's really dark and scary, and it's a performance you're not really used to seeing from de Havilland. She really goes for it, and it's quite fantastic. But again, it's a perfect indicator release, a film that would have slipped by the cracks, even though I think she did get awards for it, and quite rightly so, because it's a wonderful performance, and it's a really dark, interesting film. That's The Snakepit. Next is Spy Number 106, which might be one of the best films in the collection. It's Missing, with Jack Lemmon and Sissy Spacek, from 1982. It's absolutely amazing, directed by Costa Gravas, about a couple who go to a South American country looking for their son, and Jack Lemmon gives one of his greatest performances as a father who starts off believing what he's told by the government, and how could the American government lie about anything, and his son and his friends were just like causing trouble, and slowly the realization that perhaps the government doesn't actually care about you, and doesn't actually care about individuals, slowly dawns on him, and it's just one of those wonderful character arcs, and Jack Lemmon just plays it so beautifully. Now, Spy Number 111, A Dandy in Aspic, directed by Anthony Mann, who sadly died during the making of the film. And I picked this one because, again, to some extent, it kind of sums up Indicator. So this film, I wouldn't tell you to rush out and buy it because it's an essential. But if it's going for £7, you might get a lot of pleasure from it, because you can tell it's one of those films where the director died partway through it. It kind of works, but it also doesn't kind of work. It stars Lawrence Harvey, and again, it's a spy film with Tom Courtenay as well, and Mia Farrow. But then Peter Cook turns up halfway through from a completely different film and starts doing this bizarre comedy shtick, which is funny, but it just seems like he's walked in from a completely different film set. But again, this one's absolutely loaded with extras, so even if you're not blown away by the film, there's a lot of really good stuff in the package. But it's a fascinating little film. Like I said, it doesn't completely work, but there's aspects of it that are really interesting. Spy number 113 is Berserk with Joan Crawford. I mean, why would you not buy it? It's Joan Crawford and it's called Berserk, and it's set in a circus, and murders are happening in a circus. Did I mention Joan Crawford's in it? It's 1967, so it's later Joan Crawford, and it's so much fun. Again, is it a masterpiece? Perhaps not. Is it well worth £7 or £9 or £10? Yep. Spy number 125. Certainly done a random review of this one. It's Bellman and True from 1987, directed by Richard Longcrane, who would go on to make Richard III with Ian McKellen. This is a beautiful little film about an IT expert. Now granted, the IT in this film from 1987 is a little bit different from the IT we see nowadays. Who him and his son are kidnapped by this group of bank robbers, and he needs to sort out the security system. It's a beautiful character piece. It's quite moving in the end. Bernard Hill is absolutely fantastic. And it's just an example of those days in the 80s when the British film industry actually made lovely little films. I think this was one of the Handmade films, which George Harrison was part of. But this is so wonderful to see on Blu-ray after, again, pretty much disappearing for decades. It's just a beautiful, wonderful little British film. Spy number 128 is Charlie Bubbles, the only film Albert Finney ever directed, because it was so stressful for him that he decided never to do that again. This is 1968. Again, this is pretty much about a star going back to his hometown. It's all about fame and the stresses of fame. It goes back to his ex-wife Billie Whitelaw and his kid. Albert Finney gives one of his best performances. It's pretty much autobiographical, but like I said, it's the only film he ever directed because he just found it way too stressful. Maybe because he was acting in it as well. Spy number 148, No Orchids for Miss Blandish, which again I've done a random review of. This film absolutely blew me away. Written, produced and directed by St John L. Close. It's so odd. It was taken from a novel by an Englishman who had never been to America, but he wrote just this sleazy little novel imagining what American gangsters would be like, and how they would speak. And this is a British film with British actors, written by an Englishman, and they're all pretending to be American, and the dialogue is what they think American gangsters would speak like. So it has this odd atmosphere and this odd feeling. It's really quite nasty. For 1948, it's really dark. It's probably nastier than a lot of the American noirs. But it's just so odd, because again, it's the imaginings of what American gangsters would be like through the eyes of this English gentleman. It's a really strange, really weird, but absolutely wonderful film. Spy number 151 They Made Me a Fugitive with Trevor Howard, directed by Cavalcanti, who amongst other things did one of the episodes in Dead of Night from 1945. This is 1947, and this is just an amazing little film as well. Trevor Howard, framed for a crime he didn't commit. It's just an absolutely beautiful little British noir again. Trevor Howard is amazing. He, as we know, he usually plays stiff upper lip characters. In this one, he's completely different. Again, it still has some odd, surreal moments. He comes across a woman in this house who wants him to kill her husband in the middle of this kind of chase film. It's a really odd scene, but it still kind of works. It's an absolute gem, and again, a classic indicator film. Next is 154, and this is Joseph Losey's Time Without Pity. Joseph Losey is a really interesting director, made films in America, was blackballed due to Joseph McCarthy, went to Britain, made some films under a pseudonym, went to Europe, made some films. I think he's getting a lot more love now. Obviously, The Go-Between is coming out, has been out on Studio Canal Blu-ray. The Servant has just recently got Studio Canal 4K and Blu-ray. Mr. Klein, which might be my favourite of his films, recently got a Studio Canal Blu-ray. I've done a random review on Mr. Klein. But this stars Michael Redgrave as an alcoholic who is trying to clear his son of murder, but obviously he's not in any condition to do much of anything. It also stars Peter Cushing and Leo McKern. This is from 1957. Again, it's a really interesting, interesting, dark little film about alcoholism and murder and racing cars. Next, I think the special edition, the limited edition, is been sold out, but there is a standard edition of this one. This is spy number 166. This is Night Tide with Dennis Hopper from 1961, written and directed by Curtis Harrington. This is a strange little film about a sailor who's caught in the web of this woman who may or may not be a strange creature from the sea. Beautifully shot, a kind of odd Carnival of Souls type feel. Even though I think 61 was Carnival of Souls, not 62, so this is actually before Carnival of Souls. That might be completely wrong. Yeah, really odd, but beautiful little film. This is the 2-disc special edition. In the second disc you get lots of short films by Curtis Harrington, which are interesting. Next is spy number 178. You probably knew this one was coming. It's The Beast Must Die, which is one of those films when I heard I was actually getting a Blu-ray. I was so pleased because The Beast Must Die is one of my favourite films of all time. It's perhaps not the greatest film of all time, but that's indicator for you. Yeah, I saw this as a kid and was completely terrified of it. You watch it now, it's not scary in any way, shape or form. It's a werewolf that's a whodunit. It's probably my favourite werewolf film. Stars a whole host of wonderful people, including Charles Gray and Calvin Lockhart and Peter Cushing and Michael Gambon before he was famous. At some point the film stops and you get 30 seconds to figure out who the werewolf is. Anton Diffring's in it. Wonderful. Does it completely work? No. But it's just so much fun and so influential. There's lots of things that you can see in other films. This is from 1974. It's an Amicus production, and it's absolutely wonderful. And I was just ecstatic when it got a release. Next is spy number 180. Again, I did a random review of this. This is Ronald Neam's The Chalk Garden, Deborah Kerr, Hayley Mills and John Mills. This is arguably the greatest Deborah Kerr performance that nobody really talks about, as another governess who comes to look after Hayley Mills, who at first is really annoying, but kind of dials it back later in the film. It's about identity, and it's just absolutely wonderful. You can go check out the random review of it. From 1964, it's one of the ones I would highly recommend checking out, especially if you're a Deborah Kerr fan. Next, spy number 188. Honestly, I'm not just going to show every single Indicator release, honest. This is Paul Schrader's Light Sleeper with Willem Dafoe, Susan Sarandon, and Dana Delaney. One of Paul Schrader's best. Again, it's that constant theme with Schrader about a loner trying to find his way in the world. One of Willem Dafoe's best performances, and obviously that's saying something because Willem Dafoe is generally great in everything he does. Again, it was another title that when it was announced it was getting a Blu-ray. Very excited about. This is from 1992. I would highly recommend this one as well. Next is 189. This is Watermelon Man, directed by Melvin Van Peebles, who Criterion has released a box set recently of Melvin Van Peebles' work. I think Watermelon Man is included. This is from 1970. Again, this is a challenging film. Again, they might not get away with it nowadays. The wonderful Godfrey Cambridge, who died way too early, he allegedly ate himself to death, who was in The Wonderful Cotton Comes to Harlem, stars as, well, he's in Whiteface. He stars as a white businessman who wakes up one day and he's black. Obviously, Godfrey Cambridge is a black or was a black actor. So he's in Whiteface for the first part of the film. And again, it's about the reactions of his neighbours who, when he he wakes up black, they want to buy his house from him, so he manages to get the price up and up and up just to get him out of the neighbourhood, because they don't have a problem with him, but they just don't want, and how his business partners react to him. It's a wonderful film, but again, it's not a film that major studios are going to release. It pretty much ended Melvin Van Peebles' chances of making major films, or films in major studios. But it's a fascinating film. There's lots of things that are obviously still relevant today. But it's a wonderful film, and again, a great performance by Godfrey Cambridge, who sadly died way too early. Next is spy number 190. Cisco Pike, with Chris Christopherson, Gene Hackman and Karen Black, about a drug dealer, and Gene Hackman is a cop who goes on either side of the law when he feels like it. Again, wonderful atmosphere, 1971, just has a great sense of time and place, and Chris Christopherson is just wonderful in the role. Number 219, again another film that was on my kind of wish list of getting a Blu-ray release, and again when it was announced I was so happy, and also I've done a random review of David Mamet's Things Change. Also I could have picked David Mamet's Oleana, which I've done a random review of, which is also excellent and I would highly recommend. This is from 1988. This is a David Mamet film that's a PG, so not full of profanity. and potty mouths. This is just an absolute joy about a cobbler who agrees to take the fall for a mafia boss and take some time in prison. So Joe Mantegna is given the job of giving him a weekend before he goes to prison. And they go to Lake Tahoe and he gets mistaken for a genuine mob boss and hilarity ensues. It's just a gentle comedy, a character piece, and it's just an absolute joy. Joe Mantegna is fantastic. And if you take Mamet's House of Games Homicide and Things Change, that's not a bad trifecta. And again, Things Change is one of the ones that I would highly recommend picking up. Not many left now. Spy number 221, Devil in a Blue Dress, by Carl Franklin, starring Denzel Washington, Don Cheadle, and Jennifer Beals, and Maurice Haken and Tom Sizemore. It's arguably my favourite Denzel Washington film. I know that's not a particularly high bar. I like Denzel Washington, but sometimes I just wish he would do better things. This is set in the 40s in LA. He plays Easy Rawlins. Based on a book by Walter Mosley, who did a series of books on Easy Rawlins, and you kind of wonder, or you kind of wish there was more films starring Denzel Washington. This is from 1995. I remember seeing it on the time in home video, I believe, and I've just fell in love with it and have done ever since. It's just a beautiful film. Again, captures the time and place so beautifully. It's just absolutely wonderful. Again, I think I did a random review of that as well. Here's another film I did a random review of. Spy number 226, The Big Fix with Richard Dreyfuss. Again, this is from 1978. This is just such a fun, strange, offbeat little film. Bonnie Bedelia, John Lithgow is in it. It's about politics as this not very good private investigator gets mixed up in something. Again, total 70s, but it's a lot more fun than The French Connection. He plays a character called Moses Wine. It's just an absolute blast. Again, it's offbeat with a capital O, but it just works and it's just wonderful. And finally, again, a film I've done a random review of. It's the Bingo Long Travelling All-Stars and Motor Kings, directed by John Badham, starring Billy D. Williams, James Earl Jones and Richard Pryor. About the Negro baseball leagues and the Negro baseball teams. This is from 1976, and it's absolutely wonderful, and the extras on this are essential. There's an hour-long documentary. There Was Always Sun Shining Someplace, Life in the Negro Baseball League from 1983, which is absolutely indispensable if you're into baseball or sports history in general. It's just a wonderful film, great performances by all of them. You kind of will ask yourself, why did Billy D. Williams why was he never actually bigger? Because he's absolutely excellent in this. Charisma, funny, just an absolute blast. Set in 1939. It's just a wonderful film and also a historical lesson. So thanks very much for enduring that. That was just some indicator titles. Again, I'm not telling you to go buy them, just some indicator titles just to have in your mind if you are browsing the indicator sale. Again, it's so good to see indicator going from strength to strength, and long may it continue. They've done amazing work in the last 5 years, and here's to 5 more years and a lot more than 5 years. So thanks very much for watching, and hopefully you'll join me again for more videos. Yeah, Indicator, an absolute powerhouse. Cheerio.